This is Plant-Based Briefing, 5 Common Mistakes Plant-Based Eaters Make and How to Avoid Them, Part 1, by Ocean Robbins at foodrevolution.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson, and this is the curated content plant-based podcast, where I get permission and narrate a variety of articles on plant-based and vegan living in about 10 minutes or less every weekday. Today's article is a bit longer than most, so I've split it into 2 parts, and I'll read part 1 today and part 2 tomorrow. It's written by Ocean Robbins of Food Revolution Network, which is a nonprofit committed to healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. Now let's get to today's plant-based briefing. 5 Common Mistakes Plant-Based Eaters Make and How to Avoid Them, Part 1, by Ocean Robbins at foodrevolution.org. Summary. Switching from a standard modern diet to a plant-based diet can be great for your health, your pocketbook, and the planet. Yet with any dietary path, there are pitfalls. The good news is it's easy to identify and avoid the most common plant-based diet mistakes, so you can take joy in eating an optimally healthy diet that also helps build the world you want. A well-planned, whole foods, plant-based lifestyle is a health-promoting, nutritionally smart, delicious, and enjoyable way to live and eat. Plus, it contributes to fewer animals living in abject misery on factory farms, fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and to a safer, healthier world for future generations. So any and all steps taken toward a more plant-forward way of eating are worth celebrating in my book. Yet in my work with thousands of plant-powered and thriving course participants and members of Food Revolution Network's Whole Life Club, I've noticed 5 common missteps people take in the early days and weeks of plant-based eating. This isn't about a one-size-fits-all approach when transitioning to a vegan or plant-based diet. I don't believe that there is only one right way to eat. Instead, I want to help people make this shift to plant-based in a way that truly works for you, and that's both sustainable and nourishing, so you stick with it and feel great. My wish for you is that your eating path serves your overall wellness and quality of life. So in this article, I want to help you figure out how to transition to a plant-based diet by avoiding the 5 most common mistakes people make when first adopting this way of eating. What is a plant-based diet? Since there's a lot of confusion out there, let's start with a definition. When I talk about a plant-based diet, I'm referring to one based predominantly on whole plant foods that minimizes or excludes animal products and byproducts. So plant-based diets typically include an array of fruits, vegetables, legumes, beans, peas, lentils, grains, nuts, and seeds. Eating a plant-based diet minimizes or excludes meat, poultry, eggs, fish, and seafood, and dairy products such as cheese, yogurt, butter, and ice cream made from animal's milk. A whole foods plant-based diet also minimizes or avoids processed, refined, and artificial ingredients, including added sugars. 5 common mistakes plant-based eaters make. You might think that going plant-based couldn't be easier or more straightforward. It's all there in the name. Get the vast majority of your calories from stuff that grows from the ground and don't eat things that came from animals or were made in factories. But as they say, easier said than done. From marketing to habit to availability to busyness, a lot of things can make transitioning to a vegan or plant-based diet harder. Once you identify what those things are, you can prepare yourself to succeed when they arise. Some of these mistakes are the result of unnecessary urgency. Take the transition to a plant-based diet at your own pace, rather than out of a perceived need to be perfect today. While some folks can turn on a dime, most people don't do well going cold tofurkey. So here goes, the 5 most common mistakes that get in the way when you shift to a more plant-based diet, as well as steps you can take to avoid them. And at the end, you'll get some delicious recipes to help healthy practice become a healthy habit. Mistake number 1, relying on processed plant-based meat and other processed foods. When I was a kid, a veggie burger was something you made in your kitchen out of oats or brown rice, beans or lentils, flax seeds, and veggies. You could see the cubed carrots, kernels of corn, and chopped kale right there on your plate, and it typically fell apart before it reached your mouth. These days, you can fool most meat eaters with a Beyond Burger or Impossible Burger, which looks and tastes so much like ground beef that die-hard meat eaters often can't tell the difference. The fact that there are so many meat-free prepared foods and packaged options today is both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it's never been more convenient and easy to steer clear of animal products, as there's a plant-based or vegan substitute for just about everything you can imagine. In the past, you might have refrained from going plant-based because you just couldn't imagine giving up some favorite animal product. bacon, scrambled eggs, deli meat, burgers, jerky, yogurt, milk, cheese. But now the vegan food industry has you covered. You can even find an array of vegan holiday centerpieces these days. The problem is, these convenient and delicious options are often highly processed vegan foods. This is one of the key struggles some people face with plant-based and vegan diets: over-reliance on processed foods. Processed vegan dairy and meat substitutes may have a lot of added salt and sugar as well as saturated fat, and in some cases may even be contaminated with pesticides and GMOs and contain unwanted additives and preservatives. So beware the slick marketing that slaps the word plant-based or vegan on processed food to take advantage of the halo effect of these phrases. While meat and dairy analogs can help you transition at the beginning and can serve as occasional treats along the way, they don't meet the definition of whole plant foods. Success step. Instead, prioritize planning a nutrient-dense plant-based menu. What are some healthy plant foods you want to try? How can you do that? Many people find that meal planning and prepping for the week ahead takes away a lot of stress and removes the need to make in-the-moment decisions when you're hungry, tired, or stressed. Mistake number 2, worrying about protein when transitioning to a vegan or plant-based diet. For as long as I can remember, here's how the dialogue has gone when people talk about switching to a vegetarian or vegan diet. Person number 1, I'm vegetarian. Person number 2, knits brow, assumes worried expression. So where do you get your protein? The most common misconception around plant-based diets is that they are deficient in protein. This mistake has a long and complicated history, the gist of which is that in many people's minds, protein has been synonymous with meat and has been given the status of the best nutrient. Meanwhile, fat and carbohydrates battle it out over which one is the real villain. Spoiler alert, it's neither. The problem with this narrative is threefold. First, well-planned diets can provide sufficient plant-based protein to all, including the most extreme athletes. Second, the modern industrialized human eats way more protein than they need. And third, excess protein, in particular animal protein, actually can be harmful and lead to disease and degeneration. Plant-based amino acids provide more than enough protein for a human diet. Plant protein is not inferior to animal protein, nor should you think of it as an alternative protein source. Animal protein is not complete and plant protein is not incomplete. That was an unfortunate myth that took hold in the 1960s and it had anxious vegetarians obsessing over food combining at every meal. Plants contain all 9 essential amino acids. It's true that some plant foods are low in certain amino acids. For example, some grains are low in lysine while some legumes are low in methionine. Getting adequate amounts of all 9 essential amino acids isn't difficult when you eat enough food in general and include a variety of plant-based foods. The risk of amino acid deficiency would mostly be an issue for someone who, for example, ate only rice every day or only ate beans every day and nothing else. Success step: swap beans and more for beef. Excellent plant-based sources of protein include beans, peas, lentils, nuts, seeds, and soy foods, certain grains and legume-based pastas. Even fruits and vegetables contribute a small amount. So rather than fret over protein, simply eat a variety of different whole plant foods to cover all your amino acid needs. Want to know more about protein, how much you need, and where to get it? Check out our article on plant-based protein linked here. Mistake number 3, believing you don't need supplements for anything. While a varied diet based on whole plant foods will cover most of your nutritional bases, there are a few nutrients that often need to be added via supplementation to prevent deficiencies. And when shopping supplements, you may want to look for plant-based vitamins or vegan supplements, which aren't made with animal products and are disclosed on product packaging. B12. Vitamin B12 is probably the most important supplement for plant-based eaters, and really for everyone else too. It's crucial for red blood formation, reproduction, neurological function, and DNA production. So if plant-based diets are so great, how come we need to supplement them with B12? It's at least in part because of changes in our food supply and environment over the past 100 years. B12 is produced by single-celled microorganisms that live in soil, as well as in the intestines of animals and humans. Some humans appear to have bacteria in their gut that make enough for them, but many do not, and most of us can no longer meet our B12 needs from nature because of modern sterilization practices, chlorinated water, antimicrobial effects, and industrialized farming practices. Studies estimate that 20 to 40% of people globally, including many meat eaters, are B12 deficient. So most of us, not just vegans, are at risk of B12 deficiency. We can get it from fortified foods such as some brands of nutritional yeast and plant milks, but the safest way to ensure sufficient vitamin B12 is to take a supplement. You just listened to 5 Common Mistakes Plant-Based Eaters Make and How to Avoid Them, Part 1 by Ocean Robbins of foodrevolution.org. And I'm your host, Marian Erickson, and stay tuned tomorrow for Part 2 of this article, where we finish hearing about supplements and talk about the other 2 mistakes people make. And I wanted to make one quick point about mistake number 1. As he mentioned, plant-based meats are great foods for transitioning and for treats. And while they may not be as healthy as whole plant foods, they are certainly healthier than animal foods and animal products, which are often loaded with cholesterol and saturated fat, but also toxins that the animals ingest from the environment and from the monocrops that they're fed, loaded with pesticides, and also the antibiotics and the drugs that they're injected with to make them grow faster and not get as sick in incredibly confined environments. You can refer to episodes 183, 114, and 59 for more information on that. And please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and thanks for listening.